and perhaps it's the challenge of that relationship. Just a few moments to greet and say hello. We're good to go? Hey, Jim, ring the bell, please. Anybody here for the first time today? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not quite sure. 5. Well, I hope it turns out to be a momentous discovery for you coming here and discovering this community and this beautiful set of practices from the Buddha. We begin with a chant. Actually, now we do it as a song, a modern song, taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By intention, by design, and by lots of discussion over decades, our intention is that this is not a religious center. This is a center for this practice of spiritual awakening. And in that, there's an emphasis on not believing anything. And I grew up Catholic, and there was such an emphasis there on believing. And if you did, there's a certain, the creed, there's a certain set of beliefs, and if you don't believe this, you can't belong. And when you die, you're going to go down rather than up. And I think what the Buddha actually taught was something much more experimental in a way, much more emphasizing self-responsibility. That the teachings are there, the moral and ethical precepts are there, and we can follow them or not to discover when we follow them, how is life, and when we don't follow them, how is life. And similarly, this training of the heart-mind, which is meditation, it's really an experiment. Does it work? Does doing the practices that we teach here actually lead to the reduction in you of greed, hatred, and ignorance? And therefore, does it lead to suffering in you? And in that regard, does it affect then the people around you? And then by extrapolation, does it in fact affect the whole planet? So we're invited to do the work of awakening and the work of reducing our own suffering. And so we remind ourselves with this little song, I take refuge in the Buddha. And what is Buddha? Well, it's that which is awake, right? If you take a moment to just kind of sort of look back over your shoulder internally, you can notice that there's awareness. What is that? Nobody has the least idea. But it can be cultivated, the Buddha discovered, so that we take refuge in that which is awake, and then being awake like that reveals some things. It reveals that everything's in constant change. And it reveals that our self actually is not this, but it actually is the entire universe. And then Sangha is community, the community of people who've practiced over time. And so that's a short introduction to the refuges. And they go like this. I invite you to join in as you wish. Hang on. Oh, and refuge. Have you noticed how unstable everything is? In what can we take refuge? Youth, health, political stability, planetary weather stability, relationships. Hence, taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya. Hello to those of you joining us out on the net. Thanks for sort of being here. For 2,600 years, people have been doing exactly what we're about to do. And they've been doing it, we humans have been doing this all this time because we share a common experience of what the Buddha called dukkha, challenge, difficulty, pain. There are wonderful, blessed, extraordinary, positive experiences in life. And there's also birth, sickness, old age, decay, and death. And there's the phenomenon of having experiences we'd rather not have, and not having experiences we'd really like to have. Being with people we really don't want to be with, and not being with people we really would like to be with. This list is straight from the time of the Buddha, his first teaching. And he made this remarkable discovery that it's through developing awareness that we set ourselves free. That we learn to see how the mind itself causes the vast majority of our suffering. That the mind has this strong propensity to want to get away from the unpleasant and go after the pleasant. And so we do this ancient ritual of sorts, which is to sit down comfortably upright. And the Buddha sat cross-legged because he was from a small village in North India. Had he come from Central America or other parts of the world, he would have been squatting when he woke up. So posture isn't of the essence, though sitting upright helps. And then what to do? The simplest, most direct practice is to simply be awake. To notice what's happening here. There is a body, and there's awareness. What is it that you notice when you bring awareness into your body? It's alive, isn't it? And its aliveness speaks through sensations. Warm, cold, pressure, tingling, vibrating. Please invite awareness to open where you sit, where your buttocks press on the cushion. Or in your face. It's alive, isn't it? Notice the life in your hands, in your arms. And opening another sense door, notice what happens at hearing. Sounds arise and pass away. And we can use the fact of breathing, the sensations of breathing, as a home base. Notice that each breath at first doesn't exist, and then does. The sensations of breathing in, the expansion of the chest and abdomen, or the sensations at your nostrils, have a beginning and then an ongoingness until breathing in stops and then breathing out begins. So the breath comes to fullness and declines and then disappears. Which is, of course, what happens with every experience in an entire lifetime, including the lifetime. I came by bicycle this morning from the west side, and as I usually do, I rode down through the Riverview Cemetery. There's a couple of fresh graves waiting for today, and tens of thousands of gravestones. Everything with a beginning has an ending. So in a way, we study, we inhabit, we embrace this truth of impermanence with each breath. Probably you discover that the mind is rather busy thinking, planning, remembering, creating a past, creating a future. There's no need to fight with this. There's no need to try to get rid of it. It comes into being and will disappear. All we need to do is be aware of it. So when you can, with no violence, no urgency, come home to this body as it breathes. When we stop and sit like this, we do so with a lot of curiosity. Meditation really is the scientific method. We want to observe as accurately as we can to see how things are. So what is the experience of this moment? Is the mind calm and quiet, or restless, agitated? Is it thinking of focusing on some imagined future? Is it dwelling in the past? Is it very interested in the experience, the inner experience, or perhaps bored? Is it caught up in some emotional state? You can use this breathing as a sort of home base for the rest of your life. As long as we're alive, there's the breath. In reality, there is only one moment, and that is this one, now. This is the moment in which all of life really happens, now. It's in this now that the mind creates memories, thoughts, future plans, worries. And the untrained mind can't differentiate between fantasies, stories, memories, plans, worries, and the present moment. And every moment that awareness is here with what's happening in the present, for instance, the breath, is a moment of freedom. So we come home to the actual life of this moment in breathing, in touching the cushion or the chair, making that subtle, repeated effort to be here now in this moment now. When a body sits still for a while, it's not uncommon for discomfort to arise. When that's the case, we acknowledge that discomfort, pain. Pay attention to it a little bit, study it. Embrace it if you can. Put aside the breath, perhaps, and really get as intimate as you can with discomfort. This is common in our human experience, and we fear it a lot. We distract, we move away. Come back to breathing for a while, then if the discomfort persists, then go back there. Notice the discomfort, the pain, And notice if there's suffering attached to it. See how they wax and wane. And when you've done this for a while, you might then mindfully move into a new position. Notice that you're moving toward comfort away from discomfort. In a few moments, we'll end this time of sitting together. Please acknowledge the experience of this moment. How is this mind? What have you been noticing in the body in terms of comfort and discomfort? How strong has the concentration on the breath been? Has the mind been preoccupied with some particular topic or plan or worry? And invite awareness now into the face, into the hands, into the feet, and bringing awareness now up to the eyes or into the eyes. Perhaps move them around inside their smooth, lubricated sockets for a little bit. And then notice the intention. Intentions preclude actions, precede actions. So the intention to let your eyes open or to open your eyes. And then let that happen. Seeing. Seeing begins. Objects appear. It's quite possible to be mindful of seeing. Seeing and knowing it. almost 40 years ago, I had lived in Europe for a couple of years and had a teacher, a Buddhist teacher here in the States, and I went to Europe and set up a lecture tour for him in 10 cities. And on that tour we gathered together 25 people and then rented a chateau, the Chateau de Plage in central France, for a month retreat. And on that retreat, one of the women, a woman named Inika, who was a little older than me, went through a very difficult moment. She was doing walking meditation, and she started wobbling, and then she started tearing up, and I sat with her as she went further and further into that experience, and she started sobbing, and it was clearly a little girl crying, and she said, "Die Glase, die Glase." And she had been a little girl during the war and had to run through glass, broken glass, in bare feet, and had totally buried that. And she was an artist. She had art in the Kunstmuseum in Amsterdam, National Gallery. It was all black. It was dark and line drawings. And after that retreat, some months later, I went to visit her in Amsterdam. And her art had changed. She was doing these huge floral, bright colors and things. She no longer was burdened by that. And the point of what I wanted to get to here is, she said, you taught me how to meditate sitting down and on a retreat. I'm going to teach you how to look at art. And she took me to the museum and blindfolded me outside, took me inside and put me in front of a Rembrandt painting. And then she took off the blindfold and said, "You are now seeing. Be aware of seeing. I'll be back in half an hour. Don't go anywhere else." It's not like, "I'll do the museum today." She came back and blindfolded me again and took me to a Vermeer, a very beautiful Vermeer painting, large. These are both pretty large. And she said, "I'll be back in half an hour. Go nowhere else. Be aware of seeing and what you see and what it does to you and the thoughts that arise." And then she came back and she said, put the blindfold on, took me outside. "That's as much art as you should ever look at in one day." And as I speak of this, these two paintings are luminous in my mind. I remember the light coming in from the windows in that Rembrandt painting. I mean, it touches me to think of it. So what about spending that time with our beloved? What about spending that time with a flower in the garden? Or what about pausing long enough to really experience? Which of course is not the emphasis of multitasking and efficiency, and it's the application of mind, the application and enhancement of mindfulness in daily life, in which we begin to see beneath the surface of things, both the external, that which we see, but also what's happening internally. So, thanks to Inika. I tried to find her in the era of modern technology, but I couldn't, so who knows? So, Mr. Dalton, would you be so kind as to lead some conscious movement? Might just say, for those of you that are here for the first time, Jim will lead some mindful movement now, and then Avi will do some announcements, and then I'll be back. And I want to do a reflection on accepting things as they are, including our mothers.
All right, thank you for joining me in this upright position to be in aware of our bodies and aware of our throat. All right. A little more pollen in the air today than yesterday. So, as we get in touch with our bodies, let's intend to look at our hands for a second. And then, to what degree do you see the hands of your mother? You should see me when I shave my beard. Just like my mother. Anyway, put your attention into your feet. To what degree are those gifts from your mother? All the DNA that goes into building and repairing cells and tissues and organs in this whole body are gifts. They're not ours. They are. We are stewards of this. So how do we take care of this body instead of putting ourselves in a 21st century pose of aggravation and onslaught of stimulation? We breathe, full breath. Turn our attention to the dynamic energy of the body as if it were water and pour it into one leg and let all the weight rest on that leg and feel the calm, quiet opposite leg, and then pour the energy into that quiet leg and compare. One leg is engaged with the floor, one leg is barely touching. Then pour the energy back. When we do slow, deliberate movements, rocking, for instance, there's a soothing resonance throughout the whole body. It's not just the legs and the feet and the center of gravity, but the whole family of cells and organs and molecules, and that the whole shebang is massaged by just pouring into one side, pouring into the other. We can accomplish some of the same things by sinking and rising, breathing in as we rise, sinking as we exhale, and the whole body responds to that. It's not just air coming into the windpipes. It's not just the engagement of the knees as we sink and rise, but the whole body is in a rhythm of well-being. Learning to release, let go, reverse, release, let go, and then let the arms rise till they're extended out in front of the shoulders, and then sink. And this isn't really multitasking. I was thinking about that when Robert was talking about all the pressure on us to multitask in our lives. There is this quality of consciousness or awareness that can flow and be right here at the beginning of a sinking motion, and it can be right there at the end of the sinking, and it can be going through each mind moment between the beginning and the end. Identifying the beginning of the end is very simple and instantaneous, but there's a bunch of tiny little instants in the path between the beginning and the end. So let's breathe in this time and open and come back and feel the well-being in the lungs, in the rib cage, in the chest. And notice the ending. We sink and then we begin. Coming together, heading for the ending. Reaching overhead, we begin something new, a new gesture. Painting a rainbow. Noticing the beginning, noticing the end, noticing the pathway between. And it is sort of like multitasking, but it's really instantaneous. I can be aware of my feet and how they accommodate weight over here and how they accommodate differently over here, at the same time following the breath. We instantaneously can go back and forth between the breath and then sinking, crossing the wrists, checking. We're about to turn and separate clouds and head for another ending of a gesture, beginning. Turning, reaching back with one arm, reaching forward with the other. The back hand presses forward, the forward hand pulls in. And we can switch our attention from one hand to the other. We can pick up the breath for a second and switch to the feet. It's like lightning. They talk about the plasticity of the brain. Part of that plasticity is with no effort, it switches focus. And then on to the next moment. Not holding to the last one. Releasing down. Feeling all the way around. Sinking. Starting again. But never holding on, just being right here with this sensation. Sweeping across, letting a heel come off the floor. Relaxing down, starting another movement. And releasing down. Beginnings and endings, but also the path between, not losing a split second of awareness of this gesture. Turning, gazing at the moon. Breathing in. Breathing out. In. Pressing out to the corner. Breathing in and out. Not always the same length. And then cloud hands, so we sweep under and focus on the palm. Let the other palm float underneath like a shadow on the earth beneath the cloud. Switch hands, aware of the focus and aware of the fuzzy background. It seems to be moving because the focus is centered, solid. Upper hand, everything else blends into the background. And then relaxing for a second, taking a breath. We've been moving the center of gravity back and forth and back and forth. Now we're going to step forward and splash in the sea. And notice how the body reorganizes everything with this forward, backward rhythm. But the breath continues to expand, contract. So then as we're riding the waves, we're also riding the breath. Aware of sensations in the extremities and aware of the rhythm of the breath. Opening the arms, palms up, palms forward and down. Returning to the center and just pausing. No movement at all. The center of gravity is in the center of the body, between the hips, between the belly button and the spine. It's right there, connected to the earth through the legs. The sensations in the feet tell us we're balanced and steady. And then we step out, splash in the sea over here. Riding the wave, riding the breath. Opening the arms, turning the wrists. And back to the center. Again, we pause, finding that center, finding that balance, finding the rhythm of breathing. And sinking, making a fist, let the dragon rise from the sea. Feel how responsive the nervous system is to gestures with agency and purpose. And then gliding over the whole terrain like a crane or heron, spreading our wings, going up on the toes. Different kind of agency. Intending to turn a wheel. And turning the other direction. And then coming back to center. We lift one arm and one leg. Feel the intelligence of the body to organize all sorts of gestures in rhythm. And then simple rhythm of breathing, lifting. And coming to stillness. And noticing that without any gestures, there's still dynamic vitality moving through this mysterious form that we have been given and given responsibility for to keep it strong and resilient. So, thanking our parents, especially our mothers, and have a good week. Maybe I'll see you next Saturday here for a 4-hour workshop. Qigong.
Good morning, Sangha. For those of you who don't know, my name is Avi. I'm community coordinator here, and my pronouns are male pronouns. And I'd like to say Happy Mother's Day to everybody and those out there in TV land. And particularly, I'd like to build on what Robert said, and I'd like to say Happy Mother's Day to all of those who provide the mothering role and nurturing in non-traditional ways, like stay-at-home dads or people who care for children that are not their own, because it's very easy to forget such folks on Mother's Day. What is going on? In terms of volunteer needs, we're pretty well set in a lot of areas. We are still looking for a gardening coordinator. It would be nice if somebody was able to surface who would be able to do that for, maybe 2 to 4 hours a month. We also can use continually volunteers in the classroom. The kids love Rebecca, and the program is going great, and we look forward to having more of the Sangha participate so you can see how we are dealing with our next generation here at PIMC. What else is going on? On Tuesday, May 14th, we've got our monthly NVC practice group with Doyle and Kirsten. That's limited to people who've had some basic nonviolent communication training. On Saturday, May 18th, we've got our Buddhist movie night. We're screening Andrei Rublev. There are, as all these things, they're posted up on the website. Then on Saturday, May 18th, from 10 to 2, Jim is going to be doing his 4-day. That would be something. That would be something. NPR did this thing about mistakes. Does anybody watch Game of Thrones? Yes. Did you see about the thing with the coffee cup in that one scene with Daenerys Targaryen? So anyway, they did this whole thing about mistakes. So I am fulfilling the pattern today. I made a mistake. So anyway, he's doing a 4-hour on May 18th. He's doing a 4-hour Qigong retreat, 10 to 2. If you love what he did for 10 minutes, you'll love it for 4 hours. Then on Saturday, June 1st, we've got our first Saturday retreat day long with Gregory. And I believe the theme, does anyone recall the theme? What's? The 7 Factors of Awakening. And then on Sunday, June 2nd, we've got our newcomer orientation with Robert. And also on Sunday, June 2nd, we've got our next meeting of the Engaging the Dharma Initiative. We have our second Sunday potluck on June 9th. And then July 7th through 19th, Robert is doing his Mountain Waters retreat up in Nelson, Canada. You can sign up for that on the website. Today, after the Dharma talk, today is our potluck day, so please join us. Even if you've brought nothing, bring yourselves, that's enough. And then one other thing, we do Dharma consults here. If you have issues coming up with your practice, or you want a quick on-ramp to starting a practice, I'd be happy to put you in touch with a teacher that can, in 20 or 30 minutes, get you started. Just contact me at the office. My contact information is on the website, and it's also on this piece of paper. If you don't have one of those, they're right outside that door. And also remember, please look at the website if you want to know what's going on. If you want to be notified by email of our events, there is a clipboard over there with a sign-up sheet for your contact info. We'd be happy to get our announcement emails out to you. So, happy Mother's Day to you all. Have a blessed day.
Test one.
Good morning. My name is Vic. Can you hear me? All right. So I sent out an email to the Connections group to ask if anybody is interested in a mindful wilderness hike this coming Saturday. And we're planning on going out to the Rogue River. No, not the Rogue River. Roaring River. The Roaring River Wilderness that's in the Clackamas. It's about an hour away from here. And the hike itself is going to be a little vigorous, but it's going to be in this beautiful old-growth forest. We're going to see some big Douglas fir, hemlock, a lot of beautiful trillium that's coming out there, some nice streams, the typical old-growth forests out there. And this would be an all-day affair, so we would probably be doing like a 30-minute sit here in the living room, and then heading out, spending up to 4 to 5 hours going up, spend a little bit time at lunch, and then head on down mindfully. So all of this is not going to be silent, so it's going to be silent during the sits in the morning, and maybe a little bit during lunch, but then the rest of that is going to be more mindful meditation, mindful walking, but it's going to be kind of vigorous because we'll be going 3,400 feet up and 5.5 miles in, 5.5 miles out. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. A certain amount of physical fitness is obviously needed, but if you don't know much about hiking, I'll be happy to help and talk to you about that. And Emily's confirmed there. She's offered to bring a van with driving up to 7 people with carpooling if we need to. So it should be a lot of fun. I've got some sign-up sheets over here, more information. I'll hang out here after for potluck, so if there's any questions, come see me. It should be a lot of fun.
And who are you?
Sorry?
Who are you?
Who are I? Who am I? My name is Vic. Yeah, Vic. The name tag says so. All right. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Vic. Some of you may not have heard the news, the adventure of the wheelchair accessibility bathroom remodel project. In our getting permits for this project, the city discovered that the offices downstairs never were permitted. They were here when we bought the building, but they discovered that. And so they need to be permitted, and in order to permit them, there needs to be, they open up a lot of different folders, and among them is, since we're changing the use of downstairs from storage to offices, they may require a very large seismic upgrade, as well as a whole bunch of other things. We don't know. We'll know in a week or so, but that puts the ramp part of the process on hold. So we started fundraising about a year ago, and it's amazing how long it takes, but we are going to proceed and do what's needed to make that happen. I suppose good to follow that with the Donna Bowl. This monk's bowl that was mine 35 years ago in Burma. This is symbolic. You can use it. You can actually put cash and things in here. But it's symbolic of the fact that your work transforms to Dharma, that any contribution you make to PIMC is converted into this place and into the running of it and so on. And the best way for the community is if you go online on portlandinsight.org and join the stewardship circle. So there's a monthly donation. And maybe by the end of this week, you'll be able to go online and look at our present financial circumstances. We've been talking about doing that for a long time, and we have our last year's info and our this year's fundraising available soon. I always forget this. I mean to say it at the beginning. At the back of the room, there are 4, someone's using one, there are 4 devices for the hearing impaired. And they're quite good. You know, sometimes you get them and they're really crappy. But when we first bought the center, my mother-in-law, who's now long deceased, I'd lived with her for 17 years at that point, and she was very hard of hearing. And so one of the first things we did was to get this kind of help. So it's there, and if you need it, it's pretty good. What else? Was there anything else? Okay. Thank you for coming today. It's an enormous gift that we give each other by coming together and being Sangha, being community. It's very strengthening. My position is privileged in so many ways. Among them is that in my meetings with people and my conversations with people, I get to hear how walking in these doors and beginning a meditation practice transforms people's lives. And also people show up. I've been teaching in Portland since 1979. That's the origin of this. It was the Portland Vipassana Sangha for, golly, how long? 15, 20 years maybe. And then it became, when we incorporated as a nonprofit in 2000, we created the name, the Portland Insight Meditation Community. And people come back, people that I knew 25 years ago, that were part of the community. And usually they come back when life has made a big change. There's a death or a loss of some kind, and people then will remember, oh right, I remember what I can do when I'm really hurting. I can meditate, and one way to reestablish that is to join in community. So it's not only a gift to oneself to come here, but take a moment. I invite you to look around, maybe make eye contact with a person or two in different parts of the room. And these are our traveling companions. Right? It's really good company. Thanks. One of the nicest sounds in the world, in my view, children playing. And interestingly, I'm discovering, they say it's a factor of age, that it's more difficult to filter out sounds like that than it used to be. My attention gets pulled away. It doesn't matter in meditation because then it just flows through. But when I'm trying to focus on giving a talk or something, it's like, get pulled over. But what a nice sound, children playing happily. So I want to speak a little bit of this cultural phenomenon that we call Mother's Day. Mother's Day happened at my home after I left this morning. I have two stepkids, Nina and Adrian, who are 18 and soon to be 15. And their ritual is to make mom breakfast in bed. And so as I was leaving, Nina was going out to buy breakfast stuff, and there was a note in the hall on a chair which was, "Gone to New Seasons, go back to bed." So that lovely event will have happened. But I want to speak of this in a particular context and way. And one way to frame it is this poem written by Shodo Harada Roshi, who's about 79, I think. He's a Japanese Roshi, lives in Japan. It's called In This Passing Moment. In this passing moment, karma ripens and all things come to be. I vow to choose what is. If there is cost, I choose to pay. If there is need, I choose to give. If there is pain, I choose to feel. If there is sorrow, I choose to grieve. When burning, I choose heat. When calm, I choose peace. When starving, I choose hunger. When happy, I choose joy. Whom I encounter, I choose to meet. What I shoulder, I choose to bear. When it is my death, I choose to die. Where this takes me, I choose to go. Being with what is, I respond to what is. This life is as real as a dream. The one who knows it cannot be found. And truth is not a thing. Therefore, I vow to choose this Dharma entrance gate. May all Buddhas and wise ones help me live this vow. When happy, I choose joy. Whom I encounter, I choose to meet. What I shoulder, I choose to bear. When it is my death, I choose to die. Where this takes me, I choose to go. Being with what is, I respond to what is. This life is as real as a dream. The one who knows it cannot be found, and truth is not a thing. Therefore, I vow to choose this Dharma entrance gate. May all the Buddhas and wise ones help me live this vow. About 20 years ago, I was on an extended Sufi retreat. The Sufis are the mystical side of Islam. And my teacher, his name was Atum O'Kane, gave a talk that affected me a lot, and I know I've spoken of it many times since then. And that is that as we proceed with our spiritual lives, when we go beyond stress management and mere psychological well-being, though those are huge, but when we start doing the spelunking, the unearthing that comes naturally as we go inside, there are several phenomena, several circumstances that we will inevitably encounter. One is the person who in this lifetime played the role of mother, and another is the person who in this lifetime played the role of father, and the religion of our childhood, or non-religion of our childhood, that we will inevitably have to make peace with this circumstance, with these circumstances. Funny. A memory pops up from a long time ago teaching. In the closing ceremony I used to do, we would be standing holding hands, and I would do a loving kindness, a very brief loving kindness practice, and include the person who in this lifetime played the role of mother. And there was one woman who always left brusquely. And I got to talking about her. It turned out that she was a psychologist in private practice. And when I asked her, so you always leave sort of quickly when we're moving toward the circle. And she said, yes, I just can't stand that thing that you do about sending loving kindness to the person who played the role of mother. Right? She said, I have such strong, hateful feelings toward my mother. I just don't want to deal with it. And I didn't have the maturity I do now. So now I would probably ask her if I could press a little bit, and I would want to say something like, do you ever have clients who have difficulty with their mother? And can you help them? Since you haven't done your work, since you haven't come to resolution in your issues with your mother. I want to say just a few words about the person who in this lifetime played the role of my mother. She's been gone a long time, 20 years. How many of you have mothers who are still alive? Please raise your hands. Wow, a lot. And let's do the other side. How many mothers have passed away? So, more of you have mothers still alive. How interesting, and for some of you, oh my, it's a lot of hard work, isn't it? And for others of you, what a blessing to have such a person as a mother that you can be supported by. So my mother, Éléonore Béatrice Morin, French-Canadian, born in a little town in Ontario. Her mother died in childbirth when she was 6 years old. And this is not an unusual story, right? It's personal but not unusual. And then she was sent with a $5 bill pinned to her shirt on the train from about an overnight, it would have been an overnight train ride in care of the conductor, which was very safe. She was sent to Ottawa, where she was picked up by the nuns of there was a big gray building, which was the Chinese embassy for a long time. But it was a convent where she lived until she was 16. And we went and visited there one time, and she pointed to her room, her window, and she said, that was my room, and I was in that room for 15 hours a day. Little cubicle. She had agoraphobia when she was in adulthood. When she was 16, she left the convent and went to a little town called Sault Ste. Marie to take care of her drunken father and her 2 younger siblings. So at 16, she was responsible for taking care of everybody. And years later in my therapy, as I was complaining one time about my mother not being very warm and fuzzy, my therapist, brilliant man, said, that's interesting. I wonder how she got like that. And then the story was, of course, much more complex than that, but the task was, for me, to come to recognize how much this person did for me. Of course, having raised children myself, realizing the astonishing giving. You're tired and would like to go to sleep? Tough shit. Right? I'm tired. I'm tired, but the baby says, give. It just goes on and on. Quite remarkable. So anyway, the task was to realize that this was an ordinary human being with her own baggage who did the best she could and who gave me incredible gifts, teaching me to read early, and really was there, and also was part of the infliction of some significant wounding, some insecure attachment, and it's deep down inside this sense of I'm not really loved, because there was a lot of sickness and preoccupation and alcoholism, and so those messages got into the formation of the self. And so here I am, 71 and a half, having made peace with it a lot, but still dealing with those early lacks, early challenges. So how to move from, and there was a phase in my life where I discovered this incredible animosity towards my mother. It actually emerged as I hate her. And it was a very painful for her too, when that started coming up. Fortunately, I managed to get through it and then connect in a different way before she died. But for many of us, this relationship is fraught. So what to do? Because as we go inward, we must come to peace with this relationship if we want to continue opening. From the Thai forest tradition, there's a statement that's similar to this poem by Harada Roshi, which speaks of this moment. It's from Ajahn Chah. Anytime you want to bring your practice into perfect balance, this moment is like this. It's like this. And that's different from certainly the way that I practiced for the longest time. And it's different from the way that most people approach their meditation, in that, well, I want this moment to be like that. I want this moment to be tranquil, concentrated, full of love. I certainly don't want it to be full of wandering mind. I don't want it to be full of angry thoughts at anybody, unless I'm practicing that. So how do we bring that teaching, it's like this, and this teaching, this moment is like this. If I'm burning, I choose heat. If I'm, ouch, sorry. It's like this. I guess let me pull in this notion. What do you think of the idea that every single human being is doing the very best they can? Are there any beings that you don't believe that's true for? And if you take it to yourself, my experience is I've always done the best I could. I've done the best that I knew to be, the best. My actions were always based as fully as I could in my highest aspiration. And there's been some wreckage. There's been some pretty significant messes. So, if we take that idea, my mother did the best she could. My father did the best he could. But what about those terrible, glaring failures? What about the ones that were really injurious to me? How do I forgive that? How do I move to really accept? And it's one of the incredible beauties of this kind of meditation when we discover, when awareness really starts to blossom, and we discover that it's true, that there's only this moment. Right? when I realize there's only this moment, and then along with that comes the realization that the past is a class of thoughts that exist in the present moment. Right? There is no such thing as the past. Right? The past is gone. My mother exists only as a little plastic urn on my altar at home in cremains. But she exists really only as a set of memories. And if I am identified with those memories, if those memories are some, she did this, she did that, she didn't do this, if I'm kind of hunkered down into troll mode, and if I haven't done the grieving necessary, those beliefs about this person can affect the present moment remarkably. And when we start getting a glimpse of that, then we begin to see that to cherish resentments, particularly a resentment against someone who's been dead for 2 decades, that's self-torture and kind of a form of madness. Along with the past being that, a class of thoughts, the future is a class of thoughts which have future tense, and that doesn't exist either. All that exists is right now. I mean, I remember hearing in an early, long time ago, Dharma talk, there is no such thing as time, that time is a construct, and it seemed like such a wild idea. And I've been with 2 children through their birth and infancy. It takes a long time to beat time into children. It takes years, right? Get ready, I've got to go to work. If you're not ready tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock when I'm leaving, then you're going to go to bed half an hour earlier. But this time, get on time. And because it is a completely arbitrary construct. And we use it, we need it to keep society functioning. But the actual experience of time, in order to live in that, we lose the present. And so one of the things that we do in meditation ad nauseum is come into the present, right? Come into the breath. When the mind is wandering, notice the mind is wandering. Come here, come here, come here, come here. Just to go off on this little tangent for a moment. Just as we can hold resentments, cherish resentments about a person, we can also create national, religious stories about injustices that were done in the past or that are being done to our group now and form stronger and stronger group bonds, and then we hate each other and actually go to war over stories, which we then pass on, we make it real. So back to mothers. First thing I think, a useful belief to challenge is that I can't change how I feel about somebody. I can't do a fundamental attitude adjustment toward this person who treated me so badly. And that's not true. The mind is so stunningly pliable. And it isn't, I'm going to create, I really have a lot of resentment. I love this person. I love this person. It's not that, but it's an opening into seeing things as they actually are. So I want to do a little guided meditation. I invite you to sit comfortably, upright. So please notice that you're sitting here, sitting and breathing. And this is your home base, the present moment, this body. Embrace the breathing and the body more and more fully so that you're really here. And I'm going to use the word forgiveness. It's kind of a loaded word sometimes. There's a great book by Fred Luskin called Forgive for Good. And he defines forgiveness as developing the capacity to live happily in the present moment. So if we have the chosen reflection for this moment of being this person who in this lifetime played or is playing the role of mother, please know that to forgive is really about letting go of your end of the rope. It doesn't matter whether the other person changes or not. We, quote, forgive in order to allow ourselves to live happily in the present moment. And forgiving doesn't mean that we necessarily spend time with a person. It certainly doesn't mean that we forget. There's that saying in English, forgive and forget. Makes much more sense to forgive and remember. And forgiveness has to do with allowing your heart to be open to love this person, even if perhaps you can't like them, or even if you're going to have firm boundaries and never be in contact with them again. This is about setting yourself free. Set yourself free. So I invite you, if you have some grievance story toward this person who in this lifetime played the role of mother, just play a brief version of it. She did this, she did that, she abandoned me, whatever the story is. And notice that this story is thoughts. It's a story that you've told yourself and you tell other people, perhaps. And notice how it feels in your body. And Fred Luskin, in his teaching, would have us write this story down. To write it down really in all of its details. And then to fully work with this process, The suggestion is that you find one person, maybe two, that you tell this story to in full 3D Technicolor detail. This is, a lot of us use psychotherapists for this purpose. To tell the story, and in the telling of it, remember what it is, which is a class of thoughts that are happening in the present moment. And then one strategy we can do would be to imagine that it's possible in this moment, right here, to have a conversation with this person. A conversation where this person, who in this lifetime played the role of mother, has excellent communication skills. So that you can really meet in the level of spirit, in the level of love. What is it that you need to say? What's the response? And here we just have a few moments to touch this, but this might open the door. You could do this in writing. And then, in order to set yourself free, out of love and compassion for yourself, what if you were to form the intention? I intend to relinquish this old story. I intend to live happily and recognize that the past is actually over. And sometimes the words help, I set you free, or I forgive you. Thank you for all the good things you did. I now intend to focus on them rather than the failures. And remember, this isn't forgive and forget. It's forgive and set your heart free. And sometimes as we go deeper with this, there are apologies from ourselves. Yes, I did this and that towards you, and they weren't the most skillful things. I was doing my best, and I'm sorry. And I will do my best to refrain from such things in the future. And so there comes to forgive yourself. It doesn't mean the past goes away, but you don't need to beat yourself up over it anymore at all. I forgive myself. My intention is to live happily in the present moment. And so thanking this person, I believe these words to be really important. This person who in this lifetime played the role of mother. It's so different from my mother. It's just another human being who was cast in a role, played it with greater or lesser skill. I forgive you. And then you can make an intention in the future. When I find this mind rehearsing, remembering this old grievance story. Or perhaps when I'm talking to my siblings and the same old stories come up, I intend to interrupt it in myself at least, and realize that what's happening now is breathing in and breathing out. And that the more that I relinquish this old story, the more space I have to live in my life. And so thanking this person internally, and then letting go of that and coming home to your body. Sitting, touching, breathing. How fully can you embrace this next breath? The practice of love, or metta, can become integral to your practice of insight meditation. That in this breath, how open and loving can you be to your body? When thoughts arise, how open and loving can you be to them? This moment is like this. I intend to choose this Dharma gate. So we move into this present moment exactly as it is, with concentration or no concentration, or liking or disliking, or emotions. There is this mysterious awakeness, the Buddha, which does not identify with any story, any success or failure, any mood, pleasant or unpleasant, which in fact sees our personality as what it is, a phenomenon in nature that is ultimately not personal. I take refuge in the Buddha, in that which is awake. And any rejection, any attachment to how the present moment should be different causes suffering. It is suffering. So resting in the beauty of your being, allowing the breath to come and go, sounds to come and go. Reducing and eliminating resistance to anything. And now, please notice your body sitting here. This that you take to be your body. And then notice the intention required to let your eyes open. And let your eyes open. Seeing. Seeing. There are a couple of iterations of this forgiveness meditation on the website. One is actually, there's a video on teachings, guided meditations. The second from the bottom is a guided forgiveness practice. A while back I was working individually with someone She had this difficult relationship with her mom. And she called every Sunday afternoon, and they had the same conversation every time, and it always ended conflictually. And one time that my student came in and said, you know, last Sunday something really different happened. And she was practicing, I don't know, maybe half an hour, 40 minutes a day, so really digging in. She said, I started noticing my mother did her usual jabs, and I felt them come in and be a little painful, but mostly I felt sorry for her. I felt this compassion, and I hardly noticed it was happening, but then after the phone call ended, I realized that it was different from any conversation we'd ever had. So Mom didn't have to change. It was this space in which the communication was received changed everything. And of course, this pertains to every relationship in our lives, really, of course. So I want to stop then and see, oh, geez, time flies. Anybody have anything you'd like to add or comment or question in 5 or 6 minutes? I guess I'd like to also call to the altar of our hearts my other mom, my spiritual mom, Ruth Dennison, who helped transform that experience a lot. Avi, please come get.
Robert, whenever I hear discussions or Dharma talks about forgiveness, I always wonder about extreme cases. People who murder or who horribly abuse other people, or who do awful things in wars, or things like that. They're certainly, way outside of my experience. How do you counsel people in terms of self-forgiveness who have done really, really awful things? How is that different?
You mean counsel the person who's done the awful thing?
Yeah, in terms of self-forgiveness, how, it's one thing to say, forgive yourself for what you've done, that the past is only a construct, but if you've murdered somebody, if you've raped somebody, if you've done awful things, what do you do with that in terms of going forward if you are trying to go forward?
Funny what pops to mind. Remember Timothy McVeigh? They killed him. I think they made a terrible mistake killing him. I think it would have been really fine for him to have 6 hours a day in which the people whose lives he disrupted could come and speak to him and tell them of their pain, in the hope that he would at some point get beyond his hard beliefs and his wounding in childhood and grieve and do the grieving he needed to do, which was monumental. So, I think the instruction would always be the same, which is acknowledge what happened and feel the pain of it and grieve it as fully as you can. And then the word forgiveness is really, it kind of gets, I forgive you. I'm not sure. Radical acceptance is probably a better term. I look back in my life now, I haven't done a heinous thing like that, but I've done some pretty things that caused some people a lot of pain. And why did I do it? Well, I was ignorant. I was driven by greed, hatred, and delusion. And I wouldn't I wouldn't do those things now, clearly, but part of how I know not to do them now is I did them then. And I realized, whoa, that's not acceptable. So that's I thought where you're going with the question is, how does one forgive people who've done heinous things or who are doing heinous things? And that forgiveness is about living happily in the present moment, which is relinquishing the other person can do what they need at their end, but in order to be happy, I need to stop creating a grievance story about this other person. Which means I need to stop living in a trance. The trance is that they're doing this and they did that and I hate them. And well, that may all be happening, but do I have to be walking in my garden imagining some other person somewhere on the planet doing something bad? No. Is that helpful? The Buddha said that before awakening, any one of us is capable of doing any heinous act, given the conditions being right. And I think that's true. I was in a cult, a Buddhist cult, early in my practice for 5 years. The guy Sujata that I went to Europe and set up he was a very severely injured person with a narcissistic personality disorder, and he ran a very effective cult. That's how I learned about cults, and it was very difficult to get out. But in supporting him, we lied endlessly. And there was one particular time that I got caught in a lie. I forget who it was. It was the head of the psychology department at Stanford. And I called him in order to maybe get Sujata to come and do a lecture there. And one of our stories was Sujata has spoken in several universities, very reputable universities and blah, 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 which was completely fabricated. And on the phone, this guy said, "Which universities?" My lying didn't have legs. And the conversation ended with me embarrassed. But I was in this fantasy that since Sujata was bringing the one true Buddhism, and since he was enlightened, we thought he was enlightened because he could do a psychic trick. He could go around a room of 20 or 30 people he'd never met before and zap each person with something personal about themselves that he shouldn't have been able to know. So he had a psychic parlor trick. And people who were streetwise, there were some people, like on the European trip, there were some people who were streetwise who said, "This guy's dangerous." And there were others who were looking for someone special to know the answers for them, like myself, who fell into his spell. And I betrayed, I feel a little sad. I'd made friends. I'd lived in Europe for 2 years, and I made some really good friends. And I invited them all to come to these talks and so on. And then he would zap them, and I would betray them by saying, "Well, he's just seeing your ego. He's just pointing out your attachments." And I lost all my contacts in Europe as a result of that. Now, I was doing the best I could, but I was in a cult, and I was pretty unconscious. So what to do now? I mean, it's so long ago, but what to do now is to realize, wow, human beings, we're so vulnerable. And that's happening. Political parties are doing that all the time. We create these ideologies, and then my candidate's the superior candidate, and then we treat each other badly. It's normal for us humans. But then when we wake up, how do I accept, oh, wow, I did that. I did that, and I can see that happening around me. What shall I do then? Well, I have compassion for the people who are in that particular spell. So thank you for coming today and for listening. I hope I hope this is helpful, and if you're connecting with that person who in this lifetime played the role of your mother, I hope you have a nice connection today. And remember, she's doing her best. I feel teary. I'd really like to have a conversation with my mom. I'd like to have been then who I am now, because I would have been so much more compassionate and more. I got a long ways into it. She had a stroke and then was in a nursing home for 6 years, so I got to visit her a lot. But well, who knows what would have happened? But I sure wish I could have a conversation with her today. So, thank you very much for coming. Thank you, dear friends on the net, for coming. Let's make a big circle and we'll bring the kids in and do our closing adventure. There's a potluck today too. So, thank you, Avi. Why don't you come join us in the circle? Come on in and blow out the candle. Any people pretending to be grown-ups who'd like to come in and help with the candle blowing, come and join us. Hey. Hey. What's up? Good. High five. Yeah. So I'm told that there's an important Blazers game at 12:30, so I expect some of you will be flying out of here so we get done. May I hold your hand? Thank you. May I hold your hand? So here we are in bodies. Feel this body of yours, this one-of-a-kind, precious, living form. And notice that you're holding hands with someone. These minds can do anything, so why not cultivate them to think a kind thought for the person on your right? What blessing would you offer? May you be really, really happy in this lifetime. May you know happiness and the causes of happiness. And then to the person on your left, giving that hand a little squeeze. No breaking of knuckles, please. What would you wish? Knowing that this person is flashing through a lifetime. Doing the best he can, they can. And around our circle, to all beings in the circle. And outside into the homes, to our homeless friends, our unhomed friends, and to all beings here on the earth, those of the air, the earth, and the waters. May we all wake up and remember our true identity, our true loving nature. And the moment of the song arises. You too? Okay. Let me just be sure this is working okay. Yes. All right. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go.
May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you. That was nice. I want to say thank you to Rebecca. Thank you for holding this all so beautifully. To all of our volunteers, those who volunteer with the kids, and all the other things. This place is so sparkly and clean and well cared for. So, you ready to blow out the candle? Not yet? Not yet? Wait. Now, here's how it's going to go. I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, and then this isn't it. Yeah, that's the rehearsal. All right. Now everybody gets to make a wish. What's your wish, everybody? And you at home making a wish. Are we ready? Yes, yes, yes. Yes? Good. Taking a deep breath. Practicing patience. 1, 2, 3, blow. Yes! We did it again. All right. Thank you all. Please come and join us for some goodies in the other room. Thank you, sir.